So let's start with today's developments. Israel has agreed to a U.S. brokered ceasefire with Lebanon. It started at 5 p.m. Eastern this evening. President Trump also says he will likely host the leaders of Israel and Lebanon sometime in the coming days. What about direct talks with Iran? Well, here's the president on his way to Las Vegas earlier today.
When is the next in-person round of negotiations on the war in Iran? When will
They're
that
all
take place?
important. I mean, it's not a question of around. All of them are
When
important.
will the next in-person
Probably,
meeting take
maybe
place?
over the weekend.
It has been 47 days since the U.S. and Israel launched attacks. So how did we get here? The Trump administration's stated goals were to remove Iranian leadership, destroy its navy and missile capabilities, ensure it can never have a nuclear weapon, and prevent it from funding and supporting proxies. But things got complicated quickly when Iran shut down the critical waterway you've been hearing a lot about, the Strait of Hormuz. It's a narrow stretch of water only about 21 miles long that connects the Persian Gulf to the rest of the world. 20% of the world's oil flows through the strait. Any disruption causes fluctuation to the oil market, which impacts our gas prices, groceries, and airfares. Currently, we are in a ceasefire that lasts until early next week. Under the terms of that ceasefire, Iran is supposed to open the strait, but there is still no permanent solution. To complicate matters further, since Monday, the U.S. has implemented a blockade of Iranian ports, blocking all maritime trade in Iran. The goal is to put economic pressure on the regime after peace talks broke down in Islamabad over the weekend. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth spoke about the blockade earlier at the Pentagon.
In the meantime, and for as long as it takes, we will maintain this blockade, successful blockade. But if Iran chooses poorly, then they will have a blockade and bombs dropping on infrastructure, power, and energy.
Let's bring in CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang. Weijia, thank you for being here. So let's start with this 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. President Trump says he'll be inviting Bibi Netanyahu, the Lebanese president, as well to the White House. What more do we know about how significant of a development this is?
Well, this is critical to the broader peace deal, Lindsay, because after the president announced a ceasefire with Iran earlier this month, there was fighting the next day between Israel and Hezbollah based in Lebanon. And because there was not an agreement with regard to whether Lebanon was part of that ceasefire, and Iran insisted that it was, but Israel and U.S. Had other views on that. And so now that they are able to have this ceasefire within a ceasefire, it certainly makes the bigger one easier to try to hash out. Although that one, we should mention, Lindsay, is expiring in about 6 days. You'll remember the president announced a 2-week ceasefire with Iran to try to reach a permanent deal. So we're looking at next week, and that's why it's so critical that these talks happen.
And the president traveled to Las Vegas to tout his no taxes on tips policy, but new CBS polling shows 63% of Americans describe the condition of the U.S. economy as bad. How is the administration looking to reshape this narrative?
Well, you're seeing it. We just watched the president depart here to head to Las Vegas to have one of 2 events out west. Tomorrow he will be having another campaign-style rally in Arizona because he's taking his economic message on the road. Now, this is an indirect response to the Iran war, but it's certainly related. The president had always planned to pick up his travel as we inch closer to the midterm elections, but perhaps now more than ever, it is critical because just like the numbers you mentioned there, Americans really are feeling the economic pain of this war. And as we talk about the Strait of Hormuz and all the uncertainty around that, one thing is clear, and that is gas prices are still high, higher than Americans would like to be paying. So the president is trying to shift the focus on other more popular economic policies, such as no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. But, you know, when you look at our polling alone, not to mention several other polls that sort of tell the same story, you know, people are frustrated with the prices of food, of gas, you know, of how jobs are going here and the housing market. So the president has a heavy lift ahead of him to try to convince Americans that this is a temporary setback when it comes to oil and gas prices, and that ultimately Americans will save more money under his administration.
Weijia Jiang, thank you.